What's up guys, and welcome to what I'm hoping becomes a great series of videos. My recommendations for games you should definitely import for your Sega Saturn. The following combination of games was chosen based on a few varying traits, with some being cheaper than their Western counterparts, some being exclusive to Japan only, and some having more or improved content. I hope you guys enjoy Must-Own Japanese Sega Saturn Imports, Part 1. Saturn Bomberman Fight Here was released in late 1997 in Japan only, and has always lived in the original Saturn Bomberman shadow. This is actually quite a solid effort from Hudson Soft, changing up the traditional Bomberman by adding an isometric perspective. The ability to jump and throw bombs is part of standard gameplay, and it even has more crazy power-ups now. The new viewpoint takes some time to adjust to, but the asking price of around $30 is a great value for this type of game. It still looks good, and the multiplayer adds hours more of fun. If you haven't played it, be sure to give it a shot. Next on the list is Lair Section, a vertically scrolling shoot-'em-up that was originally developed by Taito in the arcade and ported to the Saturn by Ving in 1995. You may be asking right now, why should I import this when there was a Western release? Simple, because a complete Japanese version can be scored as low as $20 for patient Saturn fans. This also happens to be an excellent shooter with a difficulty most average gamers can still have some fun with. It has excellent graphics, a great soundtrack, and frankly, at around that $20, there simply is nothing else on the system in its league. If you're a fan of digital pinball games and kick-ass music, our next game is the one for you. Released in late 1996 and part of the digital pinball series from Kaze, Necronomicon is a solid playing pinball experience with a big soundtrack. Rock and metal tunes add a ton of drive to this type of game, and the crystal clear boards and easy to understand layouts are perfect even for beginners. Even better, I see this one go for $20 to $30 pretty regularly, making it an easy score in the land of obscene retro game prices.
Deathwalker.
Sega Age's Outrun was released in Japan in late 1996 and offered a great conversion of the arcade original. This is another one you may be wondering why I'd recommend it with a Western released compilation done by Working Designs already out there. There are two reasons why I recommend this over that release. First is pricing. The US versions of this game are way up there in price. And second, the Japanese version has all the arranged music the developers intended it to have. This one will cost you $50 or so if you go the eBay route, but even at that price, this is still one of the finest versions of this game you can buy. It even has a mode that gives you a better frame rate than the arcade original. With the Saturn having so many great 2D fighting games, our next game often gets lost in the shuffle. Released in early 1998 by Capcom, Vampire Savior, the Lord of Vampire would grace the Saturn. Using the expanded memory of the 4MB RAM card, it would bring home an excellent conversion of the arcade original. Top tier 2D animation and art design is backed up by a great soundtrack, excellent gameplay, tons of characters with radically different playstyles, and it all adds up to one incredible package. It was only released in Japan, and you'll pay between $15 and $40 for it depending on your patience and whether or not you want the RAM cartridge with it. This next one may surprise you, but I also recommend getting the Japanese version of Christmas Nights Into Dreams. The Western release was a free giveaway to most of us, but with that came the trade-off of owning the game in a simple paper sleeve. The Japanese release came in its own full jewel case, complete with instruction manual, back insert, and great disc art. The Japanese version also is nearly completely in English, so you won't lose access to any content because of a language barrier. It also happens to be dirt cheap in Japan, going for under $10 at times and rarely more than $20 complete in mint. It's little more than a demo, but the great Christmas theme and additional hidden cookies based on date make it a great pickup. Next up is an absolute no-brainer, and not just because it's one of the best fighting games from the era, but also because it doesn't cost a fortune. XMen vs Street Fighter is another 4MB RAM card driven 2D masterpiece that released only in Japan in 1997. Even considering I just recommended Vampire Savior, the tag team gameplay of this one deserves its own attention and is a must-own for the system. There's nothing like it from the era on any other home console, with the PS version being a mere shadow of this game's brilliance. Great characters, great music, great gameplay, and an utterly perfect visual presentation makes this one of the best games on the system. It usually hovers in the $30 to $40 range, but I have seen it cheaper from time to time. Our next batch of games were all Japanese exclusive releases on the Saturn that were blocked to most Western gamers because of the massive language barrier that every one of them had. Whether it was spoken or in text form, these games featured heavy story and gameplay elements that made them nearly unplayable unless you spoke and read Japanese. Thanks to some English translation projects, you can now play these fantastic experiences today and actually understand what the hell is going on. There are a number of ways to play these games, including burning yourself a patched ISO, or going to places like Etsy and getting a custom package that can look damn near like a retail release. First up is the Konami classic Policenauts. Originally dropped on the Saturn in late 1996 in Japan only, the planned Western release was scrapped, and it remained locked away until recently. If you've played Kojima's Snatcher before, you know what to expect here. You are a detective that must find your ex-wife's killer and unravel a mystery that is heavily tied to your past. Presented as a point-and-click adventure for the most part, you also get a ton of voice work and video to add to the presentation. Truly a game for adults at a time when mature games were marked by little more than blood and tits. This one actually gives you a hell of a backstory to dig into, and some great characters to meet. The translation is really good, preserving the Japanese voice work with English subtitles, keeping the original feel of the game intact. Our next game to get an English translation is Dragen Force 2. As many of you may remember, I called the first one the best game on the system, and its sequel here is damn good too. Originally released in Japan in 1998 and having absolutely no chance at a Western launch, this one takes everything about the first and turns it on its head. You now have a ton of new troop types to consider, and now you can have mixed unit types as well. The setup is similar overall, but it has enough differences and strategies of how you play to completely stand on its own. The story is darker too, painting a world that didn't quite emerge from the first game how you might have hoped. Returning is the massive amount of sprites on screen too, giving you yet another strategy RPG experience you couldn't get anywhere else. You still can't, as this has never been ported to anything else since its release. Our last entry is actually a set of games under the Shining Force 3 banner. The first in the series of episodes was released in the West, but the other two were left in Japan, unported to anything in the following years. This is truly a shame, as the game told a story that would weave 3 different characters' lives together, each with their own viewpoints and characters to interact with. It was a masterful strategy RPG with a ton to learn and discover, and it was great to see different elements of the story unfold and affect others that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. The English translation changes all that, now giving those of us that do not read Japanese the ability to appreciate the full Shining Force 3 epic. I highly advise you get the retranslated first episode as well, as this changes a few things and makes it lead into the next games more smoothly. As I mentioned before, there are reproductions of these games that look like retail releases if you search for them. So there we are, my first episode on Japanese Sega Saturn import games that you absolutely must own. Of course there are many more games I can add to this list, so feel free to hit me with your recommendations down in the comments. With the Japanese Saturn library at more than 1,000 games, there is often so much more there to consider for your collection. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.